Checking 1 2, checking 1 2. Coming in live. We are coming in live. Let's give everybody a minute to get in here. Get yourself settled down, relax a little bit. Give us a moment. Give everybody a moment to come on in. Get themselves... Yeah, we're live. Yes! Oh, feels good to see some familiar faces. Thank you for joining, guys. What is up? Let's get it. Let's go. So, while we're all getting gathered here, I'm just going to give it a start. And we're going to have a little chat about a few things today, if you'll be obliged to join us in a little journey. To start off, I'd like to start off with some introductory remarks. The chat can pick. Do you want the good news or the bad news first? I'll give you guys a minute to let me know what you think. Good news or bad news first? Bad? All right. We're going to do the A/B testing. We're going to say that was... Okay, it sounds like bad news. The bad news is, I think it's been about... Yes. I think it's been... What up, Mel? I think it's been about 24 hours since there's been a fascist demonstration, riot, rally, whatever you want to call it, in D.C. And the incoming president-elect, who is here to supposedly join the country, has been essentially silent about the deal. To me, that bodes extremely bad. That bodes extremely poorly for us. What I think is even more cynical is that from the Biden campaign Twitter account, there has been many tweets today about, wear your mask. Get your mask on. What are you doing? Keep it on. Put it above your nose. That sort of shit. But nobody is talking about, and nobody from his campaign is talking about, the fascist acts that are going. And, thank you. There has, that's disturbing for a few reasons. Obviously, the first one is, he's inheriting the seat of power at a time where we don't know what Trump is going to do. And Trump is a neo-fascist, but he's also dumb, and he's not particularly ambitious when it comes to, moving forward a fascist project. So what is scary is that if those people's energy is not harnessed and redirected, or for nothing else fucking squashed, then that is going to go somewhere, and it's going to metastasize, and it's going to get very bad. So that's the bad news. And I find this especially fucking bizarre because they're not wearing masks, and they come from the same kind of cloth. They cut from the same cloth as kind of COVID deniers. So that's why I find it to be extremely fucking weird. Yeah, that's why I find it to be extremely fucking weird that he's deciding to just focus on mask wearing, because it's like, if for nothing else, he could criticize them for not wearing masks, but he's not. So that's the first point. And the last part of our introductory remarks I'd like to make today is something very cool. And for those that are just kind of tuning in, the Eat the Rich podcast is the podcast that I participate with my wonderful comrades, Dwight and Shane and Chris. Jesus Christ, I thought I was doing the intro, and we did a program. The latest public episode that's out right now is on Glencore, which is one of the world's largest mining and metals firms, and we had a very interesting episode with them. I don't mean episode like a podcast episode, but an interesting day with them on Friday, in which they were announcing Human Rights Day, which I thought was very weird, because we spent nearly the entire time talking about how they are they are doing essentially child slavery, allegedly. I suppose I should throw that in, and at the least are driving us towards our climate disaster deaths. And what was very interesting was our very own Lloyd Howell, along with Lloyd Howell from the Feeling Good podcast, along with many other comrades, flooded their mentions, saying like, "Hey, you motherfuckers, you can't." Look, I'm just displaying the tweet that they did here. saying, we asked our employees and business partners what human rights means to them, as if their employees and business partners aren't the ones that are, doing the human rights abuses. So it's ridiculous for them to even suggest to do so, and how they've supported their communities and each other through COVID-19. And how they responded to Lloyd Howell saying, how many child slaves do you use, is, we do not employ children. You can find out about our approach to artisanal and small-scale mining, including our zero tolerance for child labor. That was fucking insane, because, well, firstly, the term artisanal mining was obviously, artfully created by an overpaid PR firm. But after looking into it, I would just tell you what it means. Yes, we should all be fucking screaming at this. Thank you, Bell. What it means, and I looked through this. I looked through I've forgotten what it is now, but a kind of like a academic paper, a white paper on what it actually means and what it is. And what it is basically is a change from what a traditional mining would kind of look like, which is big capital investment, and they come in there with big money. They create infrastructure and bring in Euclids, huge dump trucks and grinders and all sorts of mining equipment. Artisanal mining is basically the Uberification of mining, meaning they don't employ people. They essentially have people come in and it's like, we'll pay you. It's like prospecting. We'll pay you for what you bring in. You eat what you kill. And obviously, guess who sets the market price for it? And whatever they're the only game in town, so that obviously the monopoly on that drives the price down. It's absolutely unconscionable. So I say all that to say, I highly recommend, if we're looking for any sort of let's just say interaction on Twitter, I would highly recommend that we discuss this with Glencore over the next week or so. And if you haven't heard, the latest public episode of Eat the Rich, I highly recommend that you take a listen into it to learn, just how fucking despicable they are. As well as, of course, big thank you to all of our Eat the Rich Patreons. It means a great deal for us to have your support and to listen into the kind of like more analytical things that we discuss on our Patreon. So moving on, I'd love to get into the program here, and the first part of our program here, which we're going to get through, and we're already running a bit on behind schedule, but first part of the thing we're going to run through is something that I think that you guys would appreciate that we kind of dissect, which was this ridiculous fucking article called that was an op-ed, I suppose, that was published in Crocodile Camp. Sorry, I'm just reacting to the chat of Shane's drunk songs. I cannot tell you how excited I am to hopefully listen to the actual version of Crocodile Camp. If for those of you who aren't familiar with the Eat the Rich Patreon episode, I would appreciate if you take a listen into it, but and become a subscriber. But anyway, let's take a read through this really quickly. Let's just run through this. This was written by Howard Marks and Woody Hunt, who we're going to discuss who they are at the end of this. But if you want an example of manufactured consent of the media, right? I mean, who are these guys? Why did they have access to the ability to put in a fucking op-ed to The Hill, which, is of, varying states of quality. But anyway, let's read through this. They wrote as follows. In March, when the COVID-19 pandemic first hit America, Democrats and Republicans in Washington united to pass the CARES Act, which provided a quick bridge across rough waters. But now, COVID-19 spreading exponentially across the United States, and the job market is sputtering again. The congressional debate over another relief bill is devolving into a hackneyed fight between supposedly free-spending Democrats and skinflint Republicans. I have no idea what the fuck skinflint means. And just to also kind of to also kind of talk about manufacturing consent. It's like they're setting this up as if Democrats are free spending, when obviously what we're seeing that they're doing is and it's like they're ushering in an age of austerity without even taking the seat of power yet, which fucking we got to commend them for that, because that is dark, and that is just ballsy, to say the least. Critics on both sides seem to have lost sight of the fundamental question. What outcome would best serve the interests of businesses, workers, and markets? I can't even help but smile as I say that out loud. It's just so insane. As two business leaders who have seen a lot in their day, we are quite clear on the answer. Pass the bipartisan $908 billion plan, $1 billion plan proposed by a bipartisan group of House and Senate members without delay. Now, why do they want this to happen? It's obviously because it's in their interest, right? Because these relief packages are disproportionately aiding large business interests before it is aiding us. I mean, as far as the CARES Act goes, $1,200, get fucked. That is, I mean, it's insulting. I'm gonna skip down here a little bit, and we're just gonna kind of get to the bottom part, just in interest of time. And I'm gonna read this, and then we're gonna learn about these guys. Fundamentally, the fate of this agreement on Capitol Hill is even more significant because it offers a window into whether America's business community can count on the government to be a reliable partner rather than a farcical distraction in the drive to build prosperity. We're past the point where there's any value in debating the relative merits of vesting power exclusively in the public or private sector. We know that. In any democracy, the two need to strike a balance, which is hilarious because they describe themselves as free market businessmen. And I think, and we don't, okay, we'll just read the last paragraph quick and then we'll move that. In pulling together this COVID-19 compromise proposal, this group of legislators has provided some support for the economy during the period prior to the widespread availability of the vaccine. And what they mean by that is the utter fucking failure of the United States government. Again, for those of you who haven't seen this, they're doing like music festivals in Australia without a vaccine. So it's not like we had to do this vaccine. Anyway, moving forward, business leaders should eschew their reflexive opposition to any government in favor of balanced compromises that it doesn't matter. The point of this is, what's very interesting, and the reason why I thought you guys would find it valuable, is what a joke it is that, these supposed free market capitalists, of which these guys are actually, like, reappropriating public funds into their hands. Right? The reason that they got off their ass and, hired a PR firm to write this for them or whatever is because they understand very well, that the mechanism, the operationalization of what these acts are is a transfer of wealth from the working class to the ruling class, right? It is taking our money that could have been used for many other things, but they could have been used to do for Medicare for all. It's really sick. And to drive this point home, as it says here, Howard Marks, chairman and co-founder of Oak Tree Capital Group, let's take a look at them. They're an enormous, let's just call it hedge fund, private equity firm. They do, they have a lot of businesses. I thought this was a funny one. You guys would appreciate this. They own, among other things, or have investments in Quicksilver, the American, and Billabong, surfwear company. I feel like I'm back at Hot Topic. So there you go. There you go. Let's move on. Oh yeah, and sorry. So and Hunt here, our good friend Hunt. This guy is just, he's an El Paso businessman, I think, something like that. Anyway. Let's move on. Let's move on to the next part of it, which is Snitches Get Stitches. And the reason I titled it this was, we're going to take a look. Stealing to survive. More Americans are shoplifting food as aid runs out during the pandemic. Retailers, police departments, and loss prevention researchers are reporting an uptick in theft of necessities like food and hygiene products. Just drop this down here. So I'm gonna skip through this article a little bit. Yeah, I'm sorry. Let's cut to the chase here. I'm gonna echo what D. Docta has written here in the in the chat, which is, if you see someone stealing something from the grocery store, nay, if you see somebody stealing something anywhere, you don't say shit. You don't say shit. I mean, unless it's like, stealing from an old lady's home, like burglary and shit. I'm just talking about petty theft and shit like that from grocery stores and retail's big box change. Because, what is it? Won't someone think of the insurance underwriters? Like, all these losses are written off. If for nothing else, they're taken off their tax burden. So it's not like they're harming. I mean, obviously, and what we're going to read in this article is, they try to paint it as if, oh, you're hurting the mom and pop businesses. The reality is, this doesn't hurt anybody, but this a fucking minute, Excel cell on some spreadsheet that some accounting firm somewhere is looking at on behalf of the large chain store that they're contracted to do accounting for. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so we're going to read through this just very briefly. Early in the pandemic, Drew Park noticed a worrisome shift at the supermarket he manages near downtown Washington. At least once a day, he'd spot someone slipping a package of meat, a bag of rice, or other food into a shirt or under a jacket. Diapers, shampoo, and laundry detergent began disappearing in bigger numbers too. Oh, how fucking terrible that people might take care of themselves and their families. Since then, he said, thefts have more than doubled at Capitol Supermarket, even though he now stations more employees at the entrance, asks shoppers to leave backpacks up front, and displays high theft items like hand sanitizer and baking yeast in more conspicuous areas. Oh, did we lose the stream for a second? Anyway, hopefully we didn't mess it up. Park, I love used baking yeast as an item, like a high theft item. I don't know what that says more about like millennials that are trying to do, freaking homesteady shit. But anyway, Park doesn't usually call the police, choosing instead to bar offenders from coming back. How generous. It's much harder to do during the pandemic, he said. People will say, I was just hungry. And then what do? You have a fucking heart. The coronavirus recession has been a relentless churn of high unemployment and economic uncertainty. The government stimulus that kept millions of Americans from falling into poverty earlier in the pandemic is long gone. And new aid is still a dot on the horizon after months of congressional inaction. Hunger is chronic at levels not seen in decades. Shoplifting is up markedly since the pandemic began in the spring, and at higher levels in past economic downturns, according to interviews with more than a dozen retailers. Let's say that again. Shoplifting is up markedly since the pandemic began, and in the spring, and higher levels than in the past economic downturns. What's distinctive about this trend, experts say, is what's being taken. More staples like bread, pasta, and baby formula. And what the fuck does that mean? It means people don't have the shit that they need to even subsist. Previously this was the the case. They always like kind of painted looters as like, oh, they're just getting flat screen TVs and they're just getting things, creature comforts. Firstly, what the fuck else can you do? But secondly, this is just for subsistence. It's incredible that this is the only thing that we're doing. Frankly, this is very fucking polite for people to just kind of quietly try to get away with, taking staples. It's insane. And this paragraph I thought was especially sick. With Americans being advised to brace for a difficult winter amid skyrocketing coronavirus infection rates and the economic recovery nearly stalled. Again, on behalf of the fucking, I didn't say anything about Tom Steyer. Anyway, it's sick that, the fact that there's enormous government inaction, federal government inaction in this. We shouldn't have to rely on mutual aid to keep our levels of dignity, at modern day levels. But, as the modern day continues to tick on, our standards of living continue to plummet, and this is what they're admitting as such, is saying, hey, brace for a bad fucking winter. This was interesting. Several federal food programs that have provided billions of dollars in fresh produce, dairy, and meat to U.S. food banks are also set to expire at the end of the year. Guys, that's 2 weeks away. The largest among them, the Farmers to Families Food Box, has provided more than 120 million food boxes during the pandemic and is already running out of funding in many parts of the country. We're going to, so this goes to, again, the point of this program is to try to, point out the ways in which the large multinational conglomerates and large majority shareholders operationalize the wholesale screwing of us and our economic presence and futures. And so this is what they're discussing here, and this is how they kind of operationalize this. Again, this is what they call shrink, meaning items that they had in their possession, in their ownership, that companies had in their possession, their ownership as, assets, and they just disappeared without getting paid for, whether they were stolen or whether they spoiled or something like that. They just left. Workers are typically behind. Let's just dissect that for a second. Workers are typically behind about a quarter of the $25 billion in global losses reported each year, a category that includes lost merchandise, stolen cash, and employee errors. Which is like, what does that say about the workers? They're not paying them a fucking living wage that they have to risk their job in order to make ends meet. So fucking hello, wake up. So I'm just gonna scroll down here, and this is obviously the important takeaway from this: growing food insecurity. Nearly 26 million adults, and again, just wrap your head around that for a second. 26 million adults, or 1 in 8 Americans, reported not having enough food to eat as of mid-November, according to the Census Bureau. That figure has climbed steadily during the pandemic and has hit record highs since the government agency, blah, 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 blah. Why is that especially fucking sick in this era, this era of neoliberal austerity, which has just swept over us in such a quick way? We didn't even realize it was happening. We always talked like austerity is coming under the Biden administration. But here it is, right fucking here. What this means is, think about it from like a public health point of view. In order to combat a pandemic, you would want a healthy population. How can you have a healthy population when 1/8 of your population is malnourished? That to me is just simply unconscionable. And of course, here we go. The president of this food tank, a nonprofit, blah, blah, blah. We're supposed to be the greatest, richest country in the world, and we don't have food safety nets when something like this happens. Yes, wake up. We live in a capitalist country, which is inherently cruel. And they use that cruelty in order to inure us and keep us downtrodden and depress us so that we cannot organize and rise up against them. And this is an interesting example. Alex, this is somebody here. Alex graduated with a master's degree in May and was immediately in a bind. No job, no money, and with much of the country still shut down, little hope that anything would change. No cash, no jobs, no hope. I'm sorry. She'd spent most of her $1,200 stimulus check on rent. So where did that go? Then went directly to a landlord who doesn't have a job. And he just makes his money off of other people's income. And used what little she had left to buy groceries. Everything else, vitamins, moisturizer, body wash, she had shoplifted from a Whole Foods market a few miles from her apartment in Chicago. And I should say, no worse place to shoplift from than to take it directly out of Jeff Bezos' pocket. Nothing wrong with that. Of course, Jeff Bezos owns, Whole Foods. Amazon owns Whole Foods. It was like I could spend $10 and get a couple of vegetables, or I could spend $10 on just a box of tampons. And look, obviously, I am talking from this out of the experience of a cisgendered heterosexual man. But in my humble opinion, there should not be a tax on female genitals. Like, you shouldn't have to pay for hygiene products. That seems insane to me. That, like, I've never spent money on it for myself, and I am richer for it. Like, literally, I'm richer for it on behalf, in opposition to women. So I just that's just unconscionable to me, that she even has to make that calculation because of her Jesus Christ. Anyway, so that kind of wraps up this portion of it, because I mean, look, the takeaway from this article is obviously that we live in a hideously cruel political economy that does not even allow us to have our dignity to subsist, right? To stay at least on one low tier of Maslow's hierarchy, right? To even have enough calories for us to live. And again, doesn't hurt to state the obvious that the bad things that they said would happen under that would happen under socialism, or bread lines. You're gonna have people just mass unemployment. Socialism kills. The bad things that they said were gonna happen under socialism are happening now under capitalism. It's unbelievable to me. Yes. What up, Ross? So, let's move on to the third article here, which this is something. I'll give you a sec. Let's take a just quick moment for the chat to have a breather. I'm gonna have a little Marco Rubio moment and just let this sink in. Let this Bloomberg article title just sink in for like 1 second. Just let you just really just appreciate this. I muted the mic so you didn't have to hear me drinking water. Yeah, really just appreciate this for a moment. Yeah, Mel is having a collective breakdown. We're all having a collective breakdown to this. We discussed this on a previous episode of Dwight's Bites on the Eat the Rich Patreon. And basically the gist of it was Elon Musk, who, by the way, recently announced that he was. I've moved to Texas. I've moved out of Silicon Valley because there was just better tax breaks and economic opportunity. The point of it was that he completely destroyed this town, which we're going to talk about, which we're going to hear later on, because this was an economic opportunity zone in South Texas. I think just east of Brownsville. I think it was called Boca Chica or something like that. That can't be right. We'll find it out later. But they basically what was happening was residents that had lived there all their lives would like try to come home from the supermarket and find that like there's these private security forces disallowing them from even going into their own homes, being like, what business do you have on the street? Motherfucker, I live here. Come on. Yes, mouth girl text. Yeah, I understand. All right, so let's get into this. We're going to get through this. We're about halfway through this episode. We're going to get through this together, I assure you. Although we might not get through the next we might not get through the next one. Which is, I think, I'm just so excited for the next one because it is technically like a little bit tedious, but if we can really understand it, oh Jesus Christ, I'm excited for your minds right now because you don't know what the next thing is. Okay, all right, so let's get into this. Musk Bezos space race gets a boost from anti-poverty tax break. Rocket projects aren't the only thing the world's two richest people have in common. I don't know, it's a Chicago accent. Their facilities are in areas designed as opportunity zones, giving them the path to the low-tax expansion. I don't know where that came from. The world's two richest men, who committed billions of dollars of their own money to a private space race, are now eligible for an extra boost from the federal government, a tax break intended to help poor communities. Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk had competed for nearly a decade to develop engines. Firstly, no they didn't. They paid engineers to develop rockets and engines. They do not develop anything. They pay engineers to do this. Workers create things, not capitalists. Anyway, through their privately owned space companies when the perk came their way in 2018. The company's sites were included among the thousands of tracts across the United States designated as qualified opportunity zones. Qualified opportunity zones. Part of... I have no reason to do a Chicago accent right now. Forgive me. Where was I? Part of President Donald Trump's plan to use tax breaks to attract investments and jobs to distressed neighborhoods. Now, let me again cut to the chase with this thing here. Tax breaks to attract investments and jobs to distressed neighborhoods. That is, on the face of it, that's what the marketing. That's what the face of it is supposed to say, right? Like, oh, these people are now going to come in and have jobs because they're going to make a capital investment and they're going to employ you. But what it really means is, if you think about it from, this is something we always talk about on Eat the Rich, is capitalists look at any transaction or any business model, right? A business model just means literally like, how do you make money? And they look at a cost sheet, right? What are the input costs? What's the revenue? How much profit are you going to make? What a tax break means is one of the line items. Let's say we're building a factory that's gonna fabricate rebar or something, right? And let's kind of like look at their cost sheet. You know what? Let's do this for a second. I don't want to get too technical in this, but let's do this for a second. If you look at a cost for rebar, so we've got the cost of the building, we've got the cost for any permits, we've got the cost for the variable costs like the rebar itself, because we got to buy rebar to fabricate. We've got to pay taxes. We've got to pay the electric bill. We've got to pay, the phone bill, that sort of thing. We've got to pay, what else? We got to pay labor. And one of these things, basically, since the billionaires have taken the seat of power, basically they said with these things, hey, you want to do business? Check this out. Boom. We've taken that cost away from you. So what this is really saying is we're going to lower the input costs for you. We're going to lower your variable costs every year. And that's what this is for. Okay, so let's keep going here. At the time, Musk's Space Exploration Technologies Corps, I just thought it was SpaceX. I can't, that is so much more fucking dystopian, 80s future movie sounding than I thought it was. SpaceX was building a launch operation at the Texas-Mexico border. Bezos' Blue Origin had struck a deal to build a $200 million rocket engine plant in an Alabama research park. For the record, these guys that are building basically a way to leave Earth, it should actually fucking disturb us from the get-go that the two richest men in the world are trying to leave it. What the fuck does that say if the two richest men in the world want to leave it? Doesn't bode well for me. The billionaire's qualifications for the federal benefit, which hasn't even been previously reported, enables them to avoid capital gains taxes on money they steer into Opportunity Zone operations. Those investments can then grow tax-free, and if the billionaires keep their investments in place for a decade, any appreciation can be shielded from federal capital gains taxes forever. That would be a valuable break for Bezos, who's, as if he fucking needs it, whose Amazon.com Incorporated gains have made him the richest individual in the world, and Musk, who just became the planet's second wealthiest person as the value of his Tesla Incorporated stake has swelled. Why is that weird to me? It doesn't even compare. Think about Tesla is a small car company. Oh, God. That's right. I remember why we were talking about this. You guys may not know this, but one of the ways... Okay, the question is, it doesn't make sense. Microsoft is huge. How come Bill Gates isn't the richest person in the world anymore? Why Elon Musk, of all fucking douches? Tesla, if you're not familiar with this, is eligible for many carbon credits because 100% of their fleet is electric and zero emissions. They get credits from the government for doing that. Other car companies who do not meet those requirements were basically like, wait, can we just buy them from Tesla instead of actually doing it ourselves and reducing the carbon emissions of our entire fleet? And the government was like, yeah, I guess. And that's an enormous amount of money that's being paid to Tesla. Forgive me if you didn't know that and are now digging a tack into your thigh to cope with that information. Anyway, their space gambits could fizzle, of course, but they could also generate lofty profits for the pair, who have already received billions of dollars in federal space contracts between them, including Musk's SpaceX to deliver 4 astronauts to the International Space Station last month. Musk said this week he has moved to Texas, in part to be closer to SpaceX's operations, which I'm sure had nothing to do with one of his rockets fucking exploding on the tarmac. A third billionaire, Richard Branson, remember him, currently remember, this guy is like emblematic for being a rich dude, and he's only set 379th on Bloomberg's global wealth list. He's also doing this through a public company, Virgin Galactic, that operates from California and New Mexico, sites that were also included in the program. Detractors, including academics, neighborhood activists, and tax fairness advocates, say the program has delivered scant benefits to the impoverished areas they were meant to help. Instead, they see little more than tax breaks to wealthy investors. Duh. Fucking duh. Yes, duh. The Space Trio's... Oh, God, don't say that. The Space Trio's eligibility rankles these critics in particular because the plan was designed to spur new investments rather than offer incentives for existing enterprises. But as the proposal became policy, its wording was broadened, and that's a choice on behalf of politicians. It was broadened so that projects that were already in the works in areas that gained the designation, like those of Musk, Bezos, and Branson, would qualify as well. Let's listen to that again. The point of this was originally to just help new projects, but was broadened on behalf by politicians to include the existing enterprises that these 3 motherfuckers already had. So it's not even like they needed it. They just were given money, our money. Because think about it. This is money that would have otherwise been used to improve the lives of the communities that these companies are in. And it was taking money away from us. It would be a gross misuse of scarce resources to be subsidizing billionaires that go out into space when there are people struggling with real problems. Yes, we know. Yes. So we're going to move down here. This pisses me off really bad because Bloomberg here, and normally Bloomberg actually does some very good reporting. There's no doubt that they're doing economic activity. It was Boca Chica Village. We're just going to move down here towards the end. They go through and they explain specifically with the case study of Boca Chica. Now, this is one of the points that I really wanted to stress here. For Bezos, there was no worries about displacing a residential neighborhood for his rocket engine plant. The Opportunity Zone program was still languishing in Congress in 2017 when Bezos' Blue Origin announced it would set up operations in Cummings Research Park, a 3,000-acre crucible of Fortune 500 companies, high-tech startups, and university laboratories in Huntsville, Alabama. The research park, founded by space pioneer and noted Nazi Werner von Braun. Operation Paperclip fucking rears its head again. Made logistical sense for Blue Origin. It's close to NASA's Marshall Space Center, which helped earn Huntsville the name Rocket City. Alabama officials helped make it more financially appealing, too, by giving Blue Origin, a.k.a. putting $16 million of your tax money into Jeff Bezos' pocket. Yeah, we, of course, again, to the chat, who's, of course it's Nazis. It's either Nazis or slave labor. It's really uncanny. Basically anything that's older than like 70 years. Yeah, this is what we got. So I don't know how much more I really want to go through this, just in interest of time. I think we've kind of made our point. We should be, because this really does go on, but we should be extremely wary of these kind of, let's just say, public programs that are nothing more than transfers of wealth into the hands of, people that are already unspendably wealthy. And I really enjoy that. I really enjoy that term, unspendably wealthy, because unspendably, like, there's no way that Jeff Bezos can spend like $100 billion in his lifetime. Like, there's not that much shit to buy. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't even spend that much money. I just, it really blows my mind. So let's just take a quick breather break for the chat and move on to the next article. I'm just going to take a little fucking Marco Rubio moment here. Yeah. Oh, Dwight's bites. Yeah, the doctor. Oil trading. This is so fucking bizarre. It's so fucking bizarre. All right, you guys ready? Let's go. Let's do this. Essex boys. The only way is Towie. The only way is Essex. All right, let's do this, guys. Bloomberg. This came out just a few days ago, and I really read this in awe. I don't even know another way to express it. I read this in awe. Let's get into it, and we'll kind of go through at least the part of it that discusses the background of this, because I think it's like valuable to see how things have changed, and then also seeing how this actually was operationalized. The Essex Boys. How 9 traders hit a gusher with negative oil. Now, listen to this. Over the course of a few hours, on April 20th of this year, a guy called Cuddles and 8 of his pals from the freewheeling world of London's commodities markets rode oil's crash to a $660 million profit in a few hours. Get into it. This is by Liam Vaughn, Kit Shellel, and Benjamin Bain. Among the many previously unthinkable moments from 2020, one of the strangest occurred on April 20th, when the price of crude oil fell below zero. West Texas Intermediate Futures, the most popular instrument used to trade the commodity, had started the day at $18 a barrel, which, if I'm not mistaken, is pretty much below any profitability for an extractor. That was already low, but prices kept tumbling still. At 2:08 p.m. New York time, they went negative. Amazingly, that meant anyone selling oil had to pay someone else to take it off their hands, and we're going to learn why, specifically with West Texas Intermediate in a minute. Then the crude market collapsed completely, falling almost $40 in 20 minutes to close at negative $38 per barrel. It was the lowest price for oil in the 138-year history of the New York Mercantile Exchange, and in all likelihood, the lowest price in the millennia since humans first began burning the stuff for heat and light. And it killed us! Sorry. Watching this spectacle unfold were traders, energy executives, and freight company employees whose livelihoods are tied to oil's fluctuations. And again, we can also expand that to a lot of other things, right? Like, truckers, airlines, those sorts of things where, an enormous amount of the input costs, come down to oil, right? And same thing. If we look at the cost sheet of something, if you look at the cost sheet of like an airline, for instance, or let's just take a shipping company, right? They have to buy the vessel itself from the shipbuilder. They've got to, put a crew on it, captain and crew and first mate and ship's porter and all that stuff. They've got to put on, registration, flag it in a certain country. They've got to, port costs and all that stuff. But most importantly, how does it get around the world is fuel. So obviously that's extremely important to them. Watching this spectacle unfold were traders, energy executives, and freight... Blah, 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 blah. We got that. Regulators within the Commodities Future Trading Commission in Washington stared at their monitors stunned. The screen was just going nuts, Tom Klotza, an analyst at the research firm OPIS Limited, told him, blah, blah, blah. The experience, he said, was like watching a film by surrealist director Federico Fellini. You're going to appreciate it, but no one really knows what's going on. You sycophant. Within 24 hours, the insanity was over. Oil costs money again. That phrase, when I read this, rung in my head. That fucking echolalia for the Etherich Patreon listener. Echolalia, just like banging around in my head constantly. And it was attempting to see what happened as a blip. But WTI futures, that's the West Texas Intermediate, in which buyers and sellers agree on a price to trade at some upcoming date, sit at the heart of the $3 trillion a year oil and gas industry. WTI is one of the main components that determine the global price of oil, whether that oil is being sold by a Middle Eastern kingdom or a fracking conglomerate in Alberta. It affects... Oh, God, I almost want to show this to you. For those that aren't familiar with this, we're going to look at Google Maps again. When they talk about West Texas Intermediate, we're talking about Midland, Odessa. This is where... I don't know if you guys have ever, zoomed in on this. I'm going to click satellite view and tell me what you see. What are all those dots? Dots, 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 dots. Let's zoom in on any random dot. Each one of these dots is an oil derrick. Every one of these dots is an oil derrick. This one has been tapped out already. This one is maybe just being started. Every single one of these dots is an oil derrick. Look. Look. Look at it. Going over here. Boom. Every single one of these dots is an oil derrick. It doesn't end, guys. It just it doesn't end. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, so just to give you a little primer on what West Texas Intermediate, just so you can appreciate just the scale and the gravity of this. It's fucking insane. So let's keep going here. Beyond the physical commodity itself, billions of dollars worth of financial products are also tied to the WTI in a specific and idiosyncratic way. Their value is determined by the WTI price at 2:30 p.m. 4 working days before the 25th of each month. That crucial settlement for the May WTI contract, are you following here, was on April 20th. So, again, the timing of this is just so specific, like it could never have happened again in history, right? Because, again, for the May contracts of WTI, for the price of oil for May, global price of oil tied to the WTI, it was 4 days ahead of time at that 2:30 p.m. time, okay? The sudden price drop that day, which wiped out some of the investors who bet on oil recovery, was explained by the result of a confluence of macroeconomic factors, right? We know this. The pandemic and resulting economic shutdowns had decimated the demand for oil, right? There was no traffic. No one was driving anywhere. Economic activity was shuttered. We had no idea what was going on. Global supply chains started to grind to a halt. We couldn't get fucking N95 masks from China, where they're predominantly manufactured. Right? Everything was kind of in flux. And Slime Van, thank you very much, by the way, for joining us and trying to eat your pot roast while raging. Yeah, it was Mistress of Insanity. It was very peaceful. Like, it was really nice. I mean, granted the fact we were all goddamn scared out of our minds, and, you know, even still to this day, I'm terrified of every passing social interaction that I'm going to kill myself and my family because of, you know, getting coronavirus. But anyway, can we get a rage roast going in the chat? So I'm gonna just move on here, so in interest of time. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Rage roast. Let me at least participate, too. U.S. authorities and investigators from NYMEX trawled through trading data for insights into who exactly was driving the action on April 20th. Right? Because they have to look into this. Because, like, this was unprecedented, and they need to go make sure, like, there wasn't somebody fucking with the market. According to people familiar with their thinking, they were shocked to discover that the firm who appeared to have the biggest impact on prices that afternoon wasn't a Wall Street bank or a big oil company, but a tiny outfit called Vega Capital London Limited, a group of 9 independent traders affiliated with Vega and operating out of their homes in Essex. Why, aye, man. The county just northeast of London had made $660 million among them in just a few hours. Now the authorities must decide whether anyone at Vega breached market rules by joining forces to push down prices, or if they simply pulled off one of the greatest trades in history. Just for a second. Neither of those outcomes are good, right? Like, if they were deliberately pushing down the price of oil, and we're going to learn, again, you know, the point of this whole program is to educate ourselves on exactly how these enormous transfers of wealth and these enormous fortunes, you know, on the backs of our climate change and our ultimate demise are operationalized, right? So that's why I wanted to go through this with you guys. I hope you appreciate it. And also, it speaks to the reason why I titled this piece, Become Wealthy from Home, because they literally trade in their houses. So, check this out. Paul Commons started his trade. Now, this is a little bit of background, and I think this is important for us to understand how this works. Paul Commons started his trading career buying and selling oil in the rowdy pits of London's International Petroleum Exchange, where, according to former colleague, he was affectionately known as Cuddles. He had the kind of broad Cockney accent that would have been out of place in a Guy Ritchie movie, and struggled to pronounce his R's. As a result, his 3-digit badge, and I actually think this is funny, which everyone wore at the IPE, the International Petroleum Exchange, contained the letters FWE, pronounced Fui. That's the sound would come out of his mouth when he tried to say Fui. Yeah, let me get Fui. Oh, this is so Essex. Oh yeah, we're definitely doing there's going to be some Guy Ritchie impressions here. Opened in 1980, the IPE was riotous. 400 traders and brokers in colorful jackets screaming at one another and using hand signals to strike deals that were then sealed on scraps of paper. They mostly came from working class backgrounds. And this is the same for the New York Stock Exchange, too. You know, not a lot of college graduates, all this stuff. Just real kind of rough and tumble guys. You know, misogynists. They mostly came from working class backgrounds, often from Essex, known for its brash culture and ostentatious displays of wealth. The stereotypical Essex male is a soccer-loving geezer with a pint in his hand and expensive motor. The pits rewarded quick thinking and tolerance for risk, and Commons, aka Cuddles, aka Foy, thrived there. After a few years filling orders for corporate clients at Trafalgar Commodities, he became a local, one of the elite traders in red jackets who wagered their own funds. A former colleague describes him, blah, blah, blah. Top 3, he's great. This guy's a motherfucker. You got to get him out there. He's going to be pill off. He's going to go down, see his mates, have a pint, and probably hit the missus when he gets... I'm sorry. The pits were collegial and freewheeling, blah, 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 blah. So now this is the point I wanted to get to. And I want you guys, and please stop me if I'm going too fast with this specific point, because I really want us to understand this by the time we get to the end of this. One trick involved an instrument called trade at settlement, or TAS, an agreement to buy or sell a future at wherever the price ends up at the closing bell. All right? So the agreement that you buy, whatever the price is at the closing bell, that's the price. Hope I didn't max out the mic with that clap. The contract was aimed at investment funds whose mandate it was to track the price of oil over the long term. But some traders figured out that if they could take the other side of these TAS trades, then work together at the end of the day to push the closing price as low as possible so they could pocket a profit. The practice, while officially against the rules, was so common and effective, it had a nickname, Grab a Grand. It was blatant what was going on, according to the former blah, 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 who said he learned the practice after leaving the exchange. There's no evidence of Commons or his colleagues were involved in the practice. Allegedly parody. So let's just understand that again. You say, hey, I'm going to buy this thing. I'm going to buy this contract. And I'm going to buy it at the price at the time of the market close. You then have an incentive for that to go so as low as possible. And every dollar and cent that it goes lower, every quid it goes down, right? The more money you make. So in the IPE's heyday, the best traders could make tens or even hundreds of thousands of pounds in a day and still hit the pub by 5:30, still hit the pub by 6:30. But the rise of the electronic trading made them obsolete, right? And this was the same thing. That is happening in the New York Stock Exchange. And in fact, I had the misfortune of visiting, the CME, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange in New York, down in Battery Park City. And I went there and I remember talking to someone. I don't remember why I was there. Certainly wasn't a job interview. But I remember she kind of said the same thing. Like, look, this used to be full of these kind of rough and tumble traders. But now it's just kind of, it's just quiet people writing algorithms and stuff. It's kind of the same thing. It's a little, what? People are saying, Dwight, is Dwight doing the thing from Wolf of Wall Street when his dad gets super big? No, I just find the Essex accent extremely fucking funny. So, now, and this is an important, my question. All right, hang on. You get enough dues to say, we'll go negative, and folks believe you. Right, yeah, no, you're oi, go negative. Yeah, go negative. That's exactly the point. No, that's exactly the point. So let's keep going here. The IPE pits closed in 2005, forcing Commons, then 36, and hundreds of other like him to either learn the trade using a computer or give up and do something else. Many struggled to make the transition and quit. People went to banks, blah, blah, blah. So now this is where it gets very interesting. Former locals who wanted to continue working for themselves banded together at so-called arcades or prop shops, trading firms where they were given a desk, some office support, and a fast connection to markets in exchange for a monthly fee. A small commission on every trade, and in some cases, a cut of any profits they made. The biggest prop firm, known as the Five Families.
That's the biggest prop firms known as the Five Families. The Cosa Nostra, right? Everybody gets together, they're doing trades. Like even the guy Flea, he came down, he tried to do a trade as well.
I do better with the Brando when I put bread sticks in my cheeks. Anyway, his group was a mix of seasoned traders. Oh, we're already running. Let me skip down. I'm going to be nice to everybody's time. But so let's understand. These guys, they got out of the game because there was just no place for them. But they're like, look, there's still a way for us to make a living. I'm willing to learn to work a computer if that's what it takes. His group was a mix of seasoned traders and novices in their 20s, usually the sons of Commons pals or his children's peers. Among them were Dog, real name Chris Rose, a veteran pit trader, Elliot Pickering, a skinny, awkward-looking kid who still lived with his mum and drove a Rolls-Royce convertible, and Aristos Demetrio, who went by Ari, and was one of the group's biggest earners. Ari's quick success had sparked a wild rumor circulating among London's commodity traders that he'd gotten his break while working in a supermarket parking lot, pushing shopping carts where a spotted dog driving in and asked how he could afford such a fancy motor. So let's just, oh God, this is just, to understand why these guys don't deserve $600 billion, I just have to read this one last paragraph in interest of our time. The traders were all independent, each with his own brokerage account and tax returns. So that's cool. Yeah, we understand that, right? But trading records and people who worked alongside them indicate they frequently operated in a similar fashion, buying or selling in the same direction at key moments, right? A little funky. Away from the markets, some members of the group did everything together. Play golf, watch their soccer team, West Ham United, and take their families to the beachside town of Marbella in Spain, where the catchphrase for the body conscious was, "No cars before mobs, eh?" Several bought properties in the same neighborhood, blah, blah, blah. You understand? You get the point. Here it is. The only way is Essex. Towie. Whatever. So let's get to the point where this got a little funky. At the start of 2020, the big industrial economies were healthy, investors were optimistic, and West Texas Intermediate was trading at $60 a barrel. Prices began to fall in February, first reports of the coronavirus, we get that. That accelerated as the outbreak turned into a pandemic. By the end of March, futures were at $20, the lowest ever. The lowest since 9/11. To combat this, the biggest oil producers, Russia, Saudi, and the US, agreed to reduce production by 10% to try to stabilize prices. The cut wasn't nearly enough. Now, this is the interesting part. All oil futures were down, including Brent crude, which is based on oil found in Europe's North Sea. But there is a particular problem with WTI. Unlike Brent, which allows buyers and sellers to settle what they owe each other in cash. So let's just say, right, if you buy the future and you fucked it up and you owe somebody, $10 million, you pay them $10 million. But anyone holding an expiring WTI contract at the end of the month is obliged to take possession of 1,000 barrels of light sweet crude in Cushing, Oklahoma. Physically. And to illustrate this, and we're going to go back to Google Maps here, this is the town of Cushing, Oklahoma, right? We're here. Here's Tulsa. Here's Oklahoma. Here's the Cree Nation, the Muskogee Nation. Here's Cushing. Oh, here's this familiar friend. A private prison. Core Civic Cimarron Correctional Facility. But what's down below the town of Cushing is look at all of these oil terminals. This is how they operationalize that 1,000 barrels, physical receipt. So here's the problem. Boom. Normally, speculators can get around this by selling out before the expiration date and buying the following month's contract, a process known as rolling. But low prices in March and early April has attracted a rush of amateur investors into products tracking oil, including a large Chinese fund called Crude Oil Treasure. So I want to skip through this just in interest of our time, but here we go. The crucial settlement day for the May WTI contract, April 20th, was a Monday. In Essex, some of the Vega traders logged on before sunrise to take advantage of the big session. Britain was in lockdown, and the lights from their front rooms and studies dotted the still dark village, right? You can kind of imagine the picture. Early morning, it's cold. Everybody's asleep in their village except for these psychos that are sitting on their laptops in their front offices. Central to their strategy would be the TAS contracts that had once been popular in the pits. Here's how it works, and I want us to really appreciate this by the time we finish this article. Imagine a trader sees that WTI is $10, and they think at the end of the day it's going to be $5. To capitalize, he buys 50,000 barrels of the TAS market. And again, the TAS was transaction at settlements, right? At the end of the day, that's it. That's the price. Agreeing to purchase oil at wherever the price ends up at $2.30. At the same time, he starts selling regular WTI futures, 10,000 barrels, for $10. And then, if the market is falling, 10,000 more at $9, 10,000 more at $8, 10,000 more at 7, another chunk at 6, pushing the price lower until it settles at 5. Remember, it's in their interest for the price to be lower because they've bought futures and they want to get the price at the end of the day as low as possible. So when they do own it, it's low. And if it settles at 5, he's now flat, meaning he's sold as many barrels as he's bought, and he isn't obliged to take delivery of any actual oil. Again, here in fucking Oklahoma. The trader's bet has come off. His profit is 150 grand, and the difference for what he sold, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Commons traders, right? These are the guys in London. Commons traders had historically been able to make big money in a few hours on settlement days trading in the same direction. If an even bigger player showed up at the end of the session and made the opposite bet, it could push market in the other direction. That would be bad. There would be days where they lost millions of dollars among them, recalls a trader. They had balls of steel. It was quite unbelievable to see. As China's crude oil treasure fund and others sold WTI contracts in the TAS market on April 20th, the Essex traders bought them, committing to buy large quantities of oil at whatever the settlement price turned out to be. Between 11 p.m. UK time on April 19th, when the market opened, and 5 p.m., noon in New York, the following day, the price dropped from $18 to $10 a barrel. As it fell, Commons and his friends sold batches of regular WTI contracts, just like in the example above, 10,000 at 10, 10,000 at 9, 10,000 at 8, to drive it down. As the calendar spreads, as well as the calendar spreads, another financial instrument, blah, 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 as all they needed was for prices to keep falling. The further, the better. And as the day wore on, I'm getting closer to the microphone, they became nervous. Text messages said the individuals, I don't know, too much risk. With a little more than 2 hours to go until the settlement. I hope you guys are feeling the fucking stress and electricity as I'm feeling this now. Trading activity across the futures market spiked, driving the price from 10 to 5 and then all the way to 0. Now, the shift into negative prices occurred at 2:08 p.m., at which point any remaining stragglers still brave enough to be buying oil in the hope of a rebound got out of the market. What that means is everyone was like, this is fucked. We're out of here. And because of that, over the next 22 minutes, under the weight of ongoing selling by Vega and others, the May contract plummeted. NYMEX calculates the settlement price by taking a weighted average of trades occurring from between 2 minutes, from between 2:28 p.m. and 2:30 p.m. The final print, as settlement prices are known, came in at negative $37.63. In the last half hour, the 9 Vega Capital traders were, as a group, by far the biggest sellers of both WTI futures and spreads. And here's a familiar face. According to data described by Businessweek, a remarkable situation in a market normally dominated by the likes of BP, Glencore, friends of the show, and JP Morgan Chase. And the last paragraph I'm going to read here. In a mockery of the norms of commerce, the Vega crew had ended up being paid both for the futures they'd sold when oil was positive during the day and for those they bought via the TAS. That, combined with the profit from the spread trades, result in a total take of $660 million for the 9 biggest earners, according to the trading data. Demetrio, who's 31, Pickering, who is 25, and Younger, 22, pocketed in excess of $100 million each, while Rose made about $90 million. Commons took home $30 million or so. Even his son George, who's in his early 20s and with little apparent trading experience, made $8 million. I think this is a good place to stop. With the bulk of the material. I think what we really, I think what we really need to like dissect from this is just like, let's think about this for a minute. A, they made $660 million by doing nothing. Right? I mean, they didn't build any infrastructure. They didn't, you know, they didn't manufacture any N95 masks. They didn't, they weren't caring for people in the NHS suffering coronavirus. They weren't building anything that was socially useful in the least bit. Right? They weren't doing anything. They were just bullying the market and just clicking things on a computer. And, moreover, it's like, what the fuck is even the point of killing the earth with climate change by just because manipulating this oil? And I'm just like, I still just like can't. I'm looking at this picture and I just like still can't wrap my head around this. I almost like want to go here and drive around and just like really truly appreciate the human destruction. And again, for those of you who maybe tuned in late, where we went to West Texas, where we were talking about how this actually happens, the West Texas Intermediate Crude. If you zoom in, you look at every single one of these dots, and every single one of these dots is an oil derrick, right? Every single one is an oil pad. It's just really hard to even just like fathom the amount of destruction caused by these, speculative traders. I think I had another piece that we could have gone through, but I think, in interest of time, we'll save that for another time. I don't know if anybody had any more things that they wanted to contribute to that particular story, but, again, I thought I appreciate for everybody sticking through with this one, because I think what it blows my mind when I read this story that, in the midst of all of this human suffering, in the midst of the prices going down because people were dying because of congregating at their places of business and being with, their whatever, it's really just incredible. So I appreciate you guys sticking with me and learning about this with me, because, at the end of the day, the purpose of this program, and I think this kind of like little community that we're building together by going through this material, the point of this is to understand how the ruling class and capital in general operationalizes these kind of financial things. I think that the left really needs to understand corporate governance and the issues that arise from it. Thank you, Sunverb. This was fun. I hate you. Oh, man. If we don't have our comrades to go through this together, I don't know what it's worth. Listen, I think this is a good place to call it for the evening. I think I'd like to, eat some food for whatever, if I can even stomach it after this shit. Thank you, everyone, again, for participating into this. It seems like there's a little bit of a community we're building here. So with your permission, I think, this is something that we should probably try to continue on a weekly basis or a semi-weekly basis or something like that. I appreciate all you guys for joining, and I guess we can call it here. So, folks, I guess I'll see you on Twitter in like 20 minutes. So, stay cool, folks. Be well.